In this video, we'll take a look at how to delete messages inside of CometChat using the JavaScript SDK. This will include how to delete regular messages as well as how to delete conversations. Let's get started right now. I'm going to start on the CometChat website. Here we're going to head to developers and then to documentation. On this page, we want to head to the SDKs and we're going to select the JavaScript for web. We're going to expand out messaging and we're going to head over to delete a message. If you want to have a look at some of the previous videos, we've got them listed below. Using this, we're going to have a look at how to delete a message, which is pretty straightforward. There's two main parts. The first is simply deleting the message, but then there is the idea of creating a listener, which identifies when messages have been deleted so that they can be updated in real time. Let's start off with something simple. I've opened up VS Code with the project we've been working on in the last few videos. For this project, we're going to create a brand new message and then we're going to delete it. Now let's create our first message. Firstly, I'm going to create a new receiver ID and this variable will just be Adrian. Next, I'll need to create a message text. For this text, I'm just going to simply pass in hello world or maybe hello world message. Next, I'll need to add in a receiver type. Now, all of these things that I'm doing here are things that you can follow along in our earlier video where I sent a message, but I create a receiver type here of user. Now we're ready to create the text message as a new CometChat.text message where we pass in the receiver ID, message text, and the receiver type. With this done, we can now send the message. To do this, I'm going to call CometChat.sendMessage and pass in the text message class. Then I'm going to console log out the message itself. Now this is particularly useful now that we're going to be deleting a message because we can pull out the message ID. If you're building a message ID, you can actually pull this out in a number of ways, including using a backend server to pull out specific messages. But for this case, we'll do something simple. Now that we have this message with its ID, we can begin to delete it. To delete a message, it's quite simple. We just need to find out what the message ID is. Now you can normally pull this alongside a backend server, but in this case, we're just going to pull it out of the message ID from the message we just created. Now that we have this, it's simple as calling CometChat.delete message and passing in the message ID. Once we do this, we can call this to execute. And as soon as we do, we get a confirmation, such as message has been deleted successfully. Let's test this out. I'm going to open up a live server here, and we're going to have a look at the debugging to make sure this ran successfully. Let's receive this, and we can see that the message was sent successfully with the ID over here. Then we get a confirmation that the message was deleted with the exact same ID. A couple of other things to note is that when we delete a message, we get a couple of other values and properties which we can use. This includes the deleted at, which allows us to have a timestamp of when a message was deleted, as well as deleted by, which actually means that different people can delete a message. In this case, Adrian deleted the message. If we take a closer look at the types of users that can delete a message, you can have the message sender delete a conversation that they've sent one-on-one, where the message sender can also delete their own message from a group chat. But if there's an admin or a moderator in a group, they also have access to delete messages. This gives you some idea of what kinds of rules and user groups there are around deleting messages. But now, let's take a look at what happens if an application is currently running in real time and a deleted message occurs. If we want that deleted message to disappear from the application in real time, we'll need to use a real-time message delete event. An event like this can be used with a message listener class, where the listener is actually detecting whether an on-message deleted event has occurred and then identifying it and utilizing it to the way that you want to apply changes to the UI. Let's have a look at how to implement this in our own application. What I'm going to do is build one of these before we delete a message so that we can recognize that it's been activated. Most cases, you want to place this above the current commands that you're doing. And here, the very first thing I'm going to do is create a listener ID. It's something unique, and usually you want to identify it with the task that you're doing. In this case, I'm going to label it listen_for_deleted_messages. Next, I'm going to create the listener. I'm going to call CometChat.addMessageListener. In here, I'm going to pass in the listener ID, and then I'm going to pass in new space CometChat.messageListener. And in here, I'm going to pull out a specific thing, which will be the onMessageDeleted event with the message being passed out of here. I'm going to console log this out as deleted message listener has been activated, or maybe just deleted message listener, and pass out the message that was deleted. Now we can test this out. In order to test it out though, I'm going to comment out our previous delete event, and I'm going to run this manually using the REST API. So to do this, let's open up the debugging tools, and in here I want to have a look that a message has been sent, and I'm going to pull the ID of 360 across to the REST API here and run this as a deleted message event. This should work when I hit try now, and I can see that this ran successfully with a response here on the right hand side of the browser, but on the left hand side in the debugging, it's also activated the delete message listener with the same ID for the message. This is perfect. We could update the state in the UI here, or we can even pull out some of these variables that we have, even the deleted at timestamp and the deleted by, which is by the app system since I use the core administrative REST API key. Now this is great. It seems to be all working in real time, but what happens if a user deletes a message when the application was offline or closed? How do we know those have been deleted? This is actually something we kind of touched on in the last video where we edited messages. You can grab the latest, say 50 or 100 messages and look through them in the console, for example, and see if they've been modified or deleted. Let's do this right now. Here I've got the last 50 messages. If we go to some of the last ones, we can see that there is an item here called action, and this action shows us that a message has been deleted. There are also the values here of action by, action for, and action on, all of which give you more relevant information about what's happening. But realistically, when we expand these out, it gives us all the details of who might be deleting a message and how they're deleting it, at what time they're deleting it, and what that message is. All of this can be used to update the UI, so it's a good idea to understand how this works in case you need to implement it into your application. Now that we know how to delete a message, let's have a look at how to delete a conversation inside of CometChat. It's very similar to deleting messages, except we use the delete conversation method. This takes in two parameters, including the unique ID of the conversation, as well as the type of conversation that is, whether it's user or group. This is actually done quite simply, so let's jump into VS Code and try it right now. First, I need to grab the unique ID of a conversation. This could be hard to do, but we have quite a few that I've made in the past. What I'm going to do is open up my console log of my last 50 messages, and here I have a conversation ID of Adrian_user_Adrian, a conversation with myself. I'm going to use this as the unique conversation ID, which I now want to delete. This is a regular user conversation. So here in type, I'm going to set this up as just user. Now we can call CometChat delete conversation. I'm going to pass in the UID as well as the type. Then I'm going to retrieve the result of that, which is the deleted conversation or just the conversation itself. I'm going to console log out that conversation. Let me open up the debugging tools here and click refresh. And unfortunately now it seems that I have no messages left to fetch because I seem to have deleted them all, and the Adrian_user_Adrian conversations no longer exist because I seem to have also deleted them all. But now that we know this works, we can apply it for groups just the same, passing in the group ID in here, as well as the syntax type here for group if we wanted to apply that change. I hope you guys enjoyed this video for deleting messages inside of CometChat. In the next video, we're going to take a look at typing indicators. What are they, how do they work, and how can I implement them? You can find that out up here. Awesome.